Hello, everyone. This is Lala, and I recently finished covering the flagship show of The Challenge, and now I'm going to do the spin off, which is The Challenge All Stars, which is coinciding with the airing of All Stars 5 Rivals. So, first, I want to get into my experience covering or watching this specific show. So, I didn't watch All until last year where I was starting to watch the oldest of the oldest seasons, and I watched some of the All Star seasons beforehand, getting older seasons. So I watched it before I really got the content out of the older seasons, which was a mistake in hindsight. So now that I've done the rewatch of the main show in order before getting to All Stars, I definitely came into the season with a lot more context when it comes to the history between some of the contestants on this specific season and just their backstories and why they played the way they did and their overall stories. So, All Stars was technically being pushed by Mark Long, obviously, as we want OG somewhere around 2018. I really think it started pumping up in 2019. It gained a lot of momentum. A lot of the OG alumni really, really supported it, even the ones who never end up doing All Stars. And with Paramount Plus being a thing, there was a 3 season deal created for All Stars, and it started with All Stars 1, obviously. So, watching it now that I saw the evolution of the game and you really get the context of their younger stories, I thought it was a cute season. It was 9 episodes. 2 of those episodes were the final. A lot of people didn't go home before the final, and the gameplay was very, 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 very simplistic. It really was a retreat to the OG seasons, even how the cast acted around one another definitely gave OG party vibes. It was very cute. When it comes to the strategy and the gameplay and the drama of it, it's really just isn't there like that. There are a few moments of drama, but the gameplay really wasn't there. I didn't like that a lot of people kind of just volunteered to go into elimination. It definitely took the fun out of it. But it's crazy watching this even compared to some of the later seasons, and I don't know if dated is the word, but this season, out of all of them, is a real, real, real retreat to the OG cast and the OG seasons, and it does its job fine enough. So we have a bunch of updates on the cast, which I really don't feel like getting heavily into. But the gist of it is that most of them are married and with kids, which isn't shocking at all due to the ages that they are and the amount of time that has taken place since their last reality TV seasons on The Challenge and this current moment. And they are told that it is an individual game since only one person is winning the season and they're winning $500,000. They all move in and Beth doesn't know why the other women don't like her, but she has Cyrus and her tenderoni Nehemiah, which she chants him in front of everyone, and I do think that's cool that she and Nehemiah remain friends after all this time. Latyrian wants redemption since he's seen as a challenge flop, and many of these people have never played an individual season where people like Darrell and of course Anissa are used to it by now, and they're the only ones who consistently played in the recent seasons and recent years. The first daily is Deep Blue Dive, where they have to go underwater to see a number, where they have to solve the equations to see what is the appropriate number, and each teammate has to get the heavy ass blocks from underwater. Every team has a captain, and no one knows what they're going to do. None of the cast expected the first challenge to be this hard. Apparently, Trishelle lost her shit on Mark due to this, and the Silver team, I don't really remember who's on the team, with team captains Gisela, who gets a lot of positive content this episode, and Tech being safe. And she receives the Lifesaver, where you can save someone from elimination, and it's a retreat of the OG seasons, where I believe this was the case for the Gauntlet 1 and the Inferno or the first 2 Inferno seasons. And because Tyrion is the male captain of the losing team, he is automatically going into elimination. Cyrus and Tyrion are speaking about who should be voted in, and the latter wants Ace because they have no relationship. We get to the nomination ceremony where no one really objects to it, where Ace is annoyed that his name's out there. He's taking it pretty personally, but he knows that he's seen as a wallflower, and people don't get why he's taking this so personally, and that is just the name of the game. The cast ends up having an 80s party, and they're dressing up as such, but it comes off differently here than the theme parties in the recent flagship seasons, and I think it's just the vibe of the cast. And even the production value where they add a lot of the OG music of the time. Hisela remembers Ace calling her dead weight on the Gauntlet too, so she is more than thrilled with not using the lifesaver on him. The elimination that the two play is pole wrestle, where they have to take the pole from the opponent twice, and the Tyrion whoops Ace. Like, Ace damaged some of his ribs during this elimination. Anyways, Ace continues the trend of sucking at the game, but I remember reading somewhere that he had some tragedy that happened to him right before the season, so maybe it wasn't the best that he was here, and it was the best that he was eliminated early. He was still pretty chill and all, but he will come back and have a much better run on All Stars 4, though I was shocked to see how personally he took the game here. People realize that the eliminations are a lot more serious than they thought that it was going to be, and Trishelle is worried about being the first booted, since she will never talk to these people again if that's the case, and we learn that she and Katie were at one another's weddings, and they were roommates way back in the day. So clearly things will go left with the fact that they're introducing this here. Derek and Kendall are talking, and she doesn't know what she came here for, since it's been 17 years since she has done this, since her only season was the Inferno, and she's a mom and wife now, and is also a hospice nurse during COVID, no less. Trishelle apologizes to Anissa for her horrible comments on Rivals 2, where she attacked her racial identity, and Anissa does forgive her for it, though Anissa forgave her forever ago, since it was 9 years ago. Really. The second daily is Ancient Challenge History, where it is a trivia challenge where they have to answer questions 30 feet above the water, and if they get the question wrong, they have to step forward on the steps, and it is a woman's elimination. It's a pretty fun daily overall. Nehemiah wins the lifesaver, Trishelle is going right into elimination for getting last, and Anissa wins the daily, which she should, because she was on most of the seasons. Anyways, Trishelle is campaigning to people about who to throw in, and she is annoyed that Katie isn't pitching in, but it does seem like Kendall is going in at this point. At the ceremony, Kendall is called out for not doing well in the daily, and she has a meltdown over her explanation at the ceremony, and she throws Gisela under the bus. Anyways, Kendall is voted into elimination, and it's clear that she really just isn't vibing with a lot of the cast at this point, and the faster pace of the game. Trishelle is talking about Katie to Derek, and he tells her that Kendall is the other nominee, and she was expecting Katie to tell her this instead of Derek. Katie went to get food, and Trishelle calls her out for being a bad friend. And Katie's confused since the only thing she did was to get food, where she thinks that is misdirected anger. After that, we then have somewhat of a sequence where it flashes to them arguing randomly at 4 in the morning. We don't even see them arguing at first. We just hear their voices where it shows the house. Then we rush to them arguing where a lot of the house is just around. And Katie, well, her like that. And we're hearing that angry Katie voice now, so which is just very scary. And Trishelle is ranting about Katie being trash. Katie really doesn't want to go there like how she was in her 20s, since she has a husband and kids now and she's more mature. But Trishelle is really taking her there. Trishelle and Katie end up arguing again, since she's tired of having Katie's back and it never being reciprocated, and Katie mentions that they only lived together 16 years ago. Giselle mentions that she wiped her ass for 6 years, and Katie tells her that she dares Nehemiah to use the lifesaver so they can handle this issue in the elimination. And this is a case of where you hang out with someone a lot when you're younger, but you go apart, whether because you're just not around one another or you're keeping in contact very sporadic. But once you're around them again, you realize how you're really different people. And I relate to this in so many different ways. So, Kendall and Trishelle compete in Not So Fast, where they have to tie a rope around the figure and then they have to trade to untie the opponent's rope. A lot of people are helping Trishelle in the audience, but she notices that Katie is silent and Daryl is helping Kendall since they did the original World Rule seasons together. Kendall ends up winning the elimination, so Trishelle is eliminated. She really shows that people really don't change much as they age, as she got into that huge fight with Katie that got nasty, but I did enjoy her short run on the season. At the same time, I don't see her ever coming back, since she complained about how hard the season is and she doesn't like how the newbies infiltrated the original R-Star shows, and I don't think she offers much else, but she has a successful run on the traders at least. Kendall is of course happy with her elimination win, but a lot of people are shocked. Jemmy and Nehemiah are talking, and he realizes that he needs to play politically, as it's not just about the physical game, and Jemmy is good politically. She was ready to walk away from the show completely, but this was a good opportunity as she wants to prove herself. Cyrus and Beth are joking around, and she's talking about how much she loves Jemmy. Let's see how this lasts. But she sees that they have similar personalities. Tech is streaking. For some reason, they felt like we needed to see this. And Ruthie is excited because she and he streak on their original Real World season all the time, which I guess. Arissa and Ruthie are talking, and Ruthie is not over Anissa turning on her on the duel too. So she is sketched out about everyone, and Arissa wants them to connect, which is something that they didn't do on Battle of the Sexes too. The daily is melt away where they have to melt the ice to get their shields from their block of ice. A bunch of people remember doing this from back in the day, and it is a male elimination round. I'm not going to go over the teams here, I really just don't care, and of course it is a fun challenge with good commentary. Once they get their hammers, they could smash the other ice blocks and to reorganize the shields of the seasons in order, but they can't break them. Durrell, Kellyanne, Kendall, and Cyrus win the daily. Durrell, as the captain, is safe, and Kendall wins the life shielder. And Nehemiah is going into elimination due to being the captain of the losing team. Tech does. I don't know what he's doing with Nehemiah, but it looks like him popping off has Nehemiah in a mood. Nehemiah speaks to Mark about wanting to send Tech into elimination since he is smaller and also popped off, so it's an easy name to throw out there. Obviously, everyone nominates Tech, and Tech volunteers himself because he knows that he's going in anyways. Jamie is annoyed that people are consistently volunteering to go into elimination, and you can tell that she is of a different era than everyone else, and she really just doesn't fit in here. They go out to a COVID bar, and Ruthie is ranting about the lifesaver, where Kendall is explaining what happened on the Inferno, and Ruthie mentions that on her season, she didn't have to choose anyone. Jamie mentions that was going to, she wants Easy to get chosen since she doesn't want to be paired with him in the final, and she tells Nehemiah to pitch for Kendall to use the lifesaver and to get Easy in as a replacement, as Jamie doesn't want either of the nominees sent home here. There's a lot of talk about people hating Kendall and talk about her not knowing how to play the game, as she's making everyone nervous, and she's also just going on a power trip. Eric hears his name going around and doesn't want to go ahead and, obviously. Jemmy and Nehemiah are cuddling, and this is so weird to watch now, with Nehemiah recently admitting on Zach's podcast that he faked a showmance with Jemmy for screen time, and I remember Jemmy popping off on him on Twitter. Anissa is talking about her being paranoid. We don't really know who this her is. Actually, they were talking about Ruthie, so Ruthie was definitely correct in this. I had to rewatch this a few times to really hear them referring to her as Ruthie. But Ruthie walks in and tells Anissa off, as she knows what she did, referencing to the door too, and how she needs to fuck herself, where Anissa's actually very calm, since Ruthie was projecting. This is Anissa's words. Jonay tells Ruthie to calm down, and Anissa literally just walks away. And this is very rare for Anissa to do. It's time for the elimination, and of course Kendall does not use the lifesaver. Nehemiah and Tech plays right out of the town, where they have to run out of their circle, run to punch a bunch of diamonds, and the first to do it wins. But they also have to eat the world's hottest peppers doing it. It's definitely an interesting elimination, and to absolutely no one's shock, Nehemiah ends up beating Tech. It was interesting seeing Tech play this game, as he only played the Challenge 2000, which did not have any eliminations, and it has been over 2 decades. He had some very funny commentary throughout his short time, and I don't care for speaking at all, but he's entertaining. I'm looking forward to see more of him next season. Of course, Nehemiah is happy about winning his elimination, and Beth is stressing out to Cyrus, since she misses her husband and children, whereas two of them have known one another and have been friends for decades at this point. I am referring to Beth and Cyrus, and you could even tell this from like the Battle of the Sexes season and The Gauntlet 2. Arissa talks about loving food and weed, and she makes a career out of it, so she wants to prove herself in it, and she's getting focus here for a reason. Katie and Derek are talking about how she has gas in the tank and she's not the same Leah as she was when they were younger. The daily is on the ropes, where you have to walk across one rope to get to the other side and then cut one of the ropes while people are walking or playing on it. It's a fun and simplistic daily, and Janae talks about being a lot stronger since she's given birth to two children. Katie immediately quits the challenge and will feel better going into an elimination, and Gisela is eyeing Alton. The gold team wins, with Ruthie as the female captain being safe and Mark has the lifesaver, and the silver team loses, with Beth as a captain going to elimination outright. Beth campaigns to Jemmy, Nehemiah, and Cyrus about how she wants Katie or Kendall, where Jemmy knows that it's not a good idea since Kendall will beat her in the elimination, and Mark will save Katie, so Jemmy is pushing for Beth to want to go against Arisa. Beth and Mark did their OG challenge season back in 1999, over 2 decades ago, on the Road Rules vs. Real World season, so she hopes that he does her a favor. Katie volunteers to go into elimination to step up for not doing the daily, and it's discussed amongst the cast that Mark will probably save her. I didn't realize Mark and Katie were really that close to one another, but I guess it's not too much of a surprise, since that's kind of Mark's thing. They go to the club to hang out, and Narissa is by herself. There's a reason for this that I will definitely delve into, and Alton sees how different she is from their real world season. The Godfather holds his meetings to get into every woman's head to get a feel about the lifesaver and strategies, and he wants to make a bunch of deals with them. He's wearing a fake crown and a fake necklace to go along with this, so he's really playing into the Godfather thing. Mark speaks to Arissa, and she mentions how different the experience is, but she wants to be in the house, since he realizes that there is a chance that he will choose a replacement, and he's eyeing Kendall since they never got along and he is targeting her. Beth speaks to her family in a video call, and we go to the elimination where Mark decides to use his lifesaver to save Katie, but the entire house has to vote for the replacement. Most of the house decides to vote in Arissa at Beth's request, though Anissa and Kendall also get a few votes randomly, and Arissa essentially refuses to do the elimination as she was blindsided and she quits. But before she leaves, she goes on a rant because she's disgusted with everyone as they pulled some flagrant snake ass shit, and if she can't box Beth, like in a physical fight, then she ain't doing it. And she gives them the finger and tells them to kiss her ass, where TJ tells her to see her never. So the real reason why Arissa left was because she was suffering from a huge gluten allergy, and she needed special food that was being eaten and tampered with, and her cutting boards were also being tampered with as well. Even just looking at footage of her on the season, you could definitely tell that she wasn't well. She was also pissed off for Alton turning on her, but they didn't get that content or context on the episode. Arissa had a flame out moment, but it's clear that the show just really isn't for her. Beth is disappointed that she didn't get to compete, and they're all talking about Arissa's blindside turned quit. Beth and Cyrus have their talk about how they need one another, and Cyrus wants to redeem himself after the ruins, so this is 11 years in the making for him, and he wants to win money for his fiancée. Clearly, this isn't going to go very well with this being put here. Derek and Alton are climbing walls and shit. Doral is right about them being utterly ridiculous to do all of this, and Gisela is still eyeing Alton, though she didn't remember him from the Gauntlet too, but maybe it's because she was barely there. The daily is Connect Them All, where it is a mini final, and they're in teams of 6. They have to solve a checkpoint, then hold a log, then people will be eliminated after each checkpoint until there's one member per team. And a man is safe, and there are also no more lifesavers from this point onwards. Alton is guessing out early in the final, which is shocking, since his rep on the show is being this huge physical beast, but I'm assuming this is years of cigarette smoking. Gisela is also not performing hot in the daily either, but that's to be expected. The Tyrion and Kendall end up winning the daily, and Cyrus and Beth gets last, so Cyrus is automatically going into elimination. Cyrus's ankle is still fucked up, and he tells Autumn that he wants to face him in the elimination, since with his injury, he's still out enduring Alton, and he kind of blames Alton for the loss. The two of them are kind of going at it, and Alton isn't taking the blame for it, since Cyrus and Beth still lost the puzzle for themselves, and he's not going to volunteer to go into elimination. Alton thinks that Eric should go in, and people are talking about how they shouldn't vote for someone who the nominee wants every single time, and they think that giving Cyrus Alton is a death sentence. It ends up with Alton getting nominated, though Derek and Nehemiah end up voting for one another, which starts their weird, maybe real, maybe fake conflict over the next two seasons. Alton doesn't give Cyrus a handshake, and Tyrion is taking this very personally. Alton and Gisela are flirting with one another when they're at the club, and Mark is encouraging Cyrus to kick ass, though a lot of the men want Alton out, though it seems very unlikely to happen. Gisela is rubbing Alton's legs while mentioning that she is not supposed to like him and they're not supposed to like one another, and it ends up with them sleeping with each other. TJ tells them that they're stuck in pairs for the rest of the season in doubles, so Kendall is safe as well, and Beth is also going into elimination with Cyrus. Alton gets to choose his partner, and he ends up choosing Anissa as his elimination partner. They compete in over and under, where they have to pull a rope to spread out the walls that the ropes are attached to, get a ball, throw it over the wall. One person has to go over the wall while the other person has to punch through it. They then have to do this process 5 times, and it's so clear that Anissa and Alton are just going to dog walk Beth and Cyrus. The elimination is similar to the eliminations that they did on Ride or It Dies, so seeing Anissa here also gives me whiplash in that regard. I actually enjoyed Beth on this season as she was a lot calmer, humanized, and leaned more into. So we learned more about her being a family woman, and it's a shame that she was essentially twist screwed here, since this is the furthest that she's made it in a very long time. Cyrus is always a fun personality, and it's just all over the place in a good way, and I do like the friendship that the two of them have endured over the decades. Both of them will be regulars on All Stars, but this will be the best showing of him, particularly of the both of them, on this spin-off, or at least as I am watching All Stars 5. We'll have to see there for Beth. Everyone is reacting to the twist of all the other rounds from this point onwards being a double elimination, no matter the gender. Anissa talks about wanting to get to a final this time, since it's been like 12 years since she's been in one, and everyone is stressed out, where Janae is insistent about not going into an elimination this season, since she knows that she isn't good at them, which is why she never made it to a final beforehand. Katie also knows that she is unathletic and is using it to benefit herself, and Anissa is cuddling with Tyrion randomly. I don't know if they had a full showmance this season or not, but there's some talk about it. The daily is escape the room where they are in 4 teams of 4 and are in a container 30 feet above the water, and they all have to individually complete their puzzle, and people will be let out of their cages, where the losing captains will automatically go into elimination. It's a fun enough challenge where Eric wins it for his team, so he and Ruthie are safe. The black team loses where Mark and Kendall are in elimination, despite trying getting it right, and the two who don't like one another have to work together to survive. Katie makes it clear that she wants to go against either Gisela or I don't remember the other person, maybe it was Anissa, I don't really know. But she has her options, essentially. And sorry, Kendall makes it known that she wants to go against either Katie or Gisela, but Mark doesn't want to have to choose anyone because that's generally who Mark is. We get to the nominations, and Kendall told Nehemiah that she wants the house to go in and choose at this point, where Katie volunteers herself because she didn't do the challenge, and Jemmy doesn't get why people are insistent on self-nominating, mentioning that old Katie would be ashamed of newer Katie. None of the guys want Katie to choose them as an elimination opponent because they know that she's not good at eliminations, and no one wants to go against Mark as well, which is interesting because at this point, Mark only did one elimination and lost it at this point, so we know he threw it. And we have Tyrion kind of volunteering to go in with Katie. Kendall confronts Mark about not wanting to work with her throughout the season, and they are trying to build some camaraderie before the elimination. And Katie is also thinking about putting in Yes as an opponent. Katie does choose the Tyrion, which Anissa isn't thrilled with, and the four of them compete in a pull me over, where they have to pull the rope as quickly as they can and yank their partner off, where the team has to get 2 points. Despite the Tyrion and Katie getting the first round, they end up losing the following 2 rounds, so they are eliminated. Katie had her big fight with Trishelle, which was kind of shocking, and of course she continues to quit a few dailies in the season as well. But it's just a lot, this is the longest she's lasted in a very long time, though her consistently giving up is just annoying to watch. But we'll see her in the future. Tyrion kind of redeemed himself from being the OG flop guy from the early days here, and he definitely had some fun moments in the season, so I'm not shocked he became a regular for at least the next few seasons after this. Mark and Kendall are happy about their elimination win, and their issues are done from here on out, where he would actually wants to run a final with her. Derek wants to win a season since he hasn't won since 2008, and Nehemiah feels very safe and has done well despite not doing any challenge in 10 years. Kendall feels bad about sending Kitty home and she's feeling more confident, but people are still seeing her as threatening still. Anissa and Gisela are hanging out a lot and they're talking about their friendship, where they talk all the time as they've been friends since Battle of the Sexes and Anissa knows her kids, and they talk on FaceTime all the time. Rib Cage Pass is the daily where they have to go from one end of the track to another, as they have to go across a bunch of beams across the track to grab a ball, and then shoot or put it in a net. It's a fun enough daily, though we've seen something in this variation in a lot of the recent seasons. Gisela and Eric have to go into elimination for getting last, and the winners are Mark and Kelly Ann, who immediately make it to the final. Eric wants to go against Nehemiah since Doral and Alton are beasts and Yes is unproven, and Anissa does not want to be picked in elimination since she has been cut right before the final in so many seasons, and they literally show a montage of all the seasons that this has happened to her on. Gisela wants people who have not been in elimination already to go into elimination, and women like Jemmy and Anissa are not feeling this, since Gisela wants to play the game quote unquote fair. Anissa mentions that if she is chosen in the elimination, she will outright not do it and quit. Gisela mentions that Yes or Doral need to go in since they are the only two people who have not got into an elimination. Nehemiah ends up getting voted into elimination, with Anissa being the main vote that made it happen. Since Yes mentioned that him doing nice things for people in the morning and every morning is important, since he doesn't have any alliances, and this really touched Anissa. Nehemiah is blindsided and feels backstabbed by Anissa, and Gisela does not take this well at all. Gisela is ranting to Jemmy about it, and she does not live her life like that, but Anissa plays the snake game in all of her challenges. Eric and Nehemiah have an awkward conversation where he reminds Nehemiah about sending him home on the duo 1, and Nehemiah isn't worried about him since he isn't a threat, so there's some weird tension between the two of them at this point. Jamie ends up kissing Kendall's ass for going far, due to winning competitions and not politics. Gisela tells people that she is not fucking with Anissa anymore, and Anissa speaks to her, but Gisela mentions that Anissa does this in every challenge, and she won't let Anissa stab her in the back in the game. Anissa mentions that Gisela has not played in 15 years. She played with her integrity, and she did not stab Gisela in the back. Anissa doesn't get why she is being cut off, and she's tired of having to prove herself as a good person, and it not mattering at all. Nehemiah chooses Kendall as a partner, and Anissa is crying for finally making it to the final, and the four of them play in Ring Cling, where they have to grab rings from the pole that is chained up, and then have to pull all the rings in the wall in the right order. This is a pretty decent elimination, but we have Easy dropping Gisela, causing her ankle/foot to be injured, and this ends up affecting her for a while afterwards. Despite being the underdogs in the elimination and no one expecting them to win the elimination, they do end up beating Nehemiah and Kendall here. Both Nehemiah and Kendall would become regulars in the next few seasons, and they had interesting enough arcs. Nehemiah wants to prove himself after being off for 10 years, and also having his win kind of be a fluke, though I didn't like the fake showmance with Jemmy and how he revealed it recently. Kendall had her back against the wall from the very beginning, and she had a really good underdog arc here, despite her not getting the other elements of the game. Of course, we will see more of her in the next few seasons. Everyone is happy that they're in the final, and Anissa tries to speak to Gisela, which doesn't go anywhere since she sees this as Anissa's career and she's willing to do anything to get to the end, though she's pretending that they are cool. We go to the final where they have to compete in a bunch of checkpoints, and the first one involves solving a triangular puzzle, then going on a kayak to get to the next destination. Despite being the first two pairs that are on the kayak, they end up doing so poorly, and by they I'm referring to Derek and Gisela, and they are the final ones to arrive to checkpoints too, so they're eliminated as the last pair was always going to be eliminated. Derek was definitely a bit louder this season compared to the other seasons prior to this, and it will just get worse as the All-Star seasons take place. You could tell how badly he wanted this since he hasn't done a season since 3030 and was very vocal about wanting to be on a season in between. But of course, this isn't the last of him. Gisela was a nice return, and while it was clear that she had personality in her last run, her lack of care for the game never really caused for it to soar. She definitely caused a decent amount of drama in the season, had a showance with Alton, was a better competitor than expected, though still not the greatest. At the same time, she really did let the season get to her head, and as time goes by, I am fine with her not coming back. They then have to switch their partners in the next checkpoint, which involves making a bike. Then they have to tie their bikes to one another and then make another puzzle. There's another partner switch for the next checkpoint where they then have to hike up tied to their partner, and then we move on to another switch, which is an eating challenge of the hottest peppers, the ones that was done in the Nehemiah versus Tech elimination, while also making a puzzle. Demi and Darrell are not reacting well to the peppers at all, and everyone is talking about what they will do with the money. They have to partner with the only other person from the other gender that they haven't partnered with for the next checkpoint, and it's an overnight portion. This involves another gross eating challenge, and then they hang around the apparatus beds for the entire night, where one of them has to stand while the other one sleeps, and then switch back and forth. It is the morning, and they have to race to the top of the mountain for the final part of the season, and it's individual, where this last leg is also double the points. There isn't much to say at this point. I'm just going to cover the results of the overall final. Yes wins the entire season, getting first. Darrell gets second. Janae and Kellyanne tie for third. Mark gets fifth place. Alton gets sixth place. Jamie and Ruthie tie for seventh place. Anissa gets ninth place. And Eric gets 10th place. So last out of everyone that remained. I guess Big AC redeemed himself from the Gauntlet 3 final, where he wasn't taken out to part way, though he still got last out of everyone who wasn't eliminated in the final. He didn't get much content in the season, and I am fine with this being his final appearance on the show overall. It was kind of interesting seeing Anissa with a bunch of the OGs again, as she was playing with the newer people for so long, and I do think that this is more her vibe. But obviously, if you're still getting offers to do the flagship show and you don't have anything holding you back, of course you're going to do that. She finally made it to the final, but she was really poor in it. So that story is done. And then the drama with Gisela was something that happened too. Jemmy really stuck out like a sore thumb in the cast, as she's a lot younger than everyone else, and she sees the game in a much different way than everyone else did. But it did lead to a different and interesting dynamic. Though you could argue that she didn't fit in All Stars, especially with her doing a flagship season only like 3 years prior to this. She was definitely one of the main narrators of the season, though I didn't like her romance with Nehemiah, and I think out of everyone who made it to the final, Ruthie is also someone who was the most under the radar, which says something since many of the finalists didn't get much screen time. She had that freak out on Anissa, and that's really it from what I remember, but the strategy still isn't there for her. Alton had a better season here than how he ended on Battle of the Seasons too, as he did seem motivated this season at least, but his lack of endurance was really shocking. The showmatch with Gisela was fine enough, though he apparently ghosted her a while after the season, but I am definitely fine with this being the final chapter of Alton on the show overall. Mark got the show greenlit, and you could really tell that he was enjoying himself, though it said that he had to create a show to come back to the show under any capacity. Mark was pretty fun and likable this season, and had a lot of good moments here as well. He's probably, or this is probably the most easygoing he has been in a while, and he was clearly the biggest narrator of the season. I think this is the least drama-centric Killian has ever been in a challenge season, but I do think it's one of her best seasons competitively, and I do think she might have been the woman winner if the wins were gendered. She didn't get the most to do on the season, however. Jonay talked about intentionally playing under the radar and doing the show 7 months after giving birth, which is very commendable for her. Being a mom gave her a lot of strength, and she made it to her first final, which will start an arc for her throughout the next few seasons. Darrell finally got to compete in his first individual final, and this is his first final since Fresh Meat 1, and he came right off of Double Agents, where I really wanted him to win this season, but I do think his performance here helped his legacy, especially compared to some dismal performances in his more recent flagship showings. He was still funny and got more camera time here than he did on Double Agents, so I do think All Stars fits him better. Yes really came out of nowhere. He did a very dated old season and flopped on the elimination seasons he competed on before doing this 20 years later. He didn't even get much screen time up until the final, which was disappointing, but he did do well in the final, and I liked how he strategized in the final with taking off less clothes, or taking off clothes so he wouldn't be as overheated. But we will see him a few more times where he has to defend his title, and he was just a cool person overall. So we do have a reunion for this. It will be interesting to see if there's one for All Stars 5, since it is on MTV now and it just means an extra episode for MTV. And everyone talks about doing this after being off for 1 to 2 decades and doing it during the pandemic. Jemmy and Killian start snipping at one another over Kendall, who wasn't even there, oddly, and a lot of people being shocked at how intense the current challenges are. Jeremy talks about being on a Twitter rampage. Sorry, Kendall. Jeremy's talking about Kendall being on a Twitter rampage, campaigning to come back to the show for years, but is shocked that she didn't know what she was doing. Kellyanne is defending Kendall, and even Giselle tells her to stop defending her so much. Honestly, Kendall really should have been here to defend herself. Yes talks about how he used a lot of the winnings to pay reparations to some of the native people that they stole. By they, obviously the Americans stole land from, and he is an architect. So he really did a lot for the money, and everyone is applauding him. Gisela's leg is still injured from the final elimination, and they talk about Trisha and Katie's fight. They aren't there, so it's kind of just awkward. And they talk about how Arissa was struggling with being in the house, and Dora mentions her gluten allergy and stuff like that. Gisela talks about her fight with Anissa, and she mentions that all Anissa should have done was tell her, where she has done that beforehand. Anissa wasn't there, which was odd, though I do think she was filming Spies, Lies, and Allies at the time. And Jamie talks about her flirtmances with Tech and Nehemiah. Gisela talks about her showmans with Alton, and they aren't together, though she did think that he wasn't married in the beginning, and there's still a lot of confusion about whether he is or isn't married amongst the cast. Alrighty, so that concludes All Stars 1. It's crazy that I'm going back to like 40-minute reviews now, where for like the last two eras, I've done reviews that lasted as long as 2 hours, and the others were like an hour and a half. So it's kind of odd. But, anyways, I do think that they made the best with what they could with All Stars 1, where they did it in the middle of COVID and they were given a 2 week time frame to film. So it explained some of the format issues. This season's really all about the vibes and that OG feeling, and it really succeeded in that element. The episodes weren't unnecessarily long. There wasn't a whole lot of gameplay, and a lot of the cast didn't get much screen time, but it's an easy, fun watch. So you definitely see the changes in All Stars 4 and even All Stars 5 with how certain things change with the All Stars franchise overall. And I do think that a lot of the people who were on the season only really did it because COVID was such a thing. Where with COVID quote unquote being done with now, you saw how things changed. But yeah, this is a pretty fun season. I'm definitely looking forward to doing the next 3 to 4 seasons, and I definitely enjoyed this more now that I do know their origin seasons and more of their backstory. Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to say about it, but it was fun. Thank you all for watching, and I'll be back with more soon. Bye!